going to begin the meeting of August 16th, 2011. Board of Selectmen's business meeting. We have a special article on, well, not an article, but a special point of interest on one of it. So we'll treat that a little bit differently than we normally do. Roll call, everyone's here?
Yes, sir.
Would you all join me in the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business, approval of minutes, August 2nd, 2011.
I move we approve the minutes as they were presented to us.
Discussion? All in favor? Okay, next up is the review of the special town meeting warrant for August 24th, 2011. It's been very contentious with townsfolk, and they have questions and comments, and so I'm going to try to treat this a little bit as a hearing, public hearing, but we're still going to, observe decorum and everything else. So, and once again, we started it last week. Anyone who wants to speak during this point or a public comment, they're coming to the podium. If you don't want to come to the podium, you're not going to speak. And I don't want to be harsh about that, but that's the way it's going to be. So I'm going to open up the this part of the business meeting for questions and comments about the special town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I'd just like to introduce to
Oh,
everybody
excuse me. Yes.
here this evening some of the folks that would be vital for us to answer your questions as we go through this public hearing process. We have sitting in the front David and Nathan Bateman, the developers of the Affordable Housing Project. And behind them we have the town attorney, Alan Shepard. So as the chairman reads the warrant article, Article 2 and Article 3, please ask your questions through the chair, and whatever we can do to have those answered, we certainly will.
Okay, Article 1 would be to elect a moderator to preside over the meeting. Shouldn't be too much discussion on that, is there any? Article 2. Shall the selectmen for the town of Berwick be authorized to temporarily convey title to the Old Berwick High School and surrounding grounds on School Street to Sullivan School Associates LP or a related entity for the purpose of allowing the remediation of confirmed environmental contamination as part of the redevelopment of the property, with the title conveyed back to the town when the remediation is completed within 180 days as required for the federal funding for remediation. And I will open it up there. Right here.
Mr. Chairman, I thought it would be helpful just because I've been engaged in these discussions with the Board of Selectmen, just to maybe explain to the public that may be interested, even though they're at my back here. I'm sorry about that. Just a little bit of the procedure why these warrant articles are necessary.
You can turn around if you want to.
All right, thank
because
you.
you're speaking to all of them.
Good. As I understand it, there was a vote originally for the town to authorize a 75-year lease of the Sullivan School to allow the redevelopment of the property for affordable housing. And that's pretty much, with that town vote and authority, the Batemans proceeded to get what approvals they needed to do this project like they had proposed to do. Unfortunately, Maine State Housing Authority, which is the entity that's overseeing the affordable housing component of this, because of their internal requirements, was going to require a 99-year lease rather than a 75-year lease. So that happened after the fact, and that's why this has to go back to the voters, just to modify that initial authority. And then also, once, and Keith can probably speak a little bit more to the procedure on this, once they got into the project, it was discovered that there was some environmental problems with it. And the Batemans were willing to take on the remediation of it. If they didn't do it, the town would have to do it. And in order to do that, one of the things that was available to them was some federal funding through a fund called the Brownfield Fund. Well, as you can imagine, anything involving the federal government involves a fair amount of red tape and certain specific requirements and procedures that the federal government requires, one of which is we're not going to give money to an entity to do remediation unless they own the property. In other words, they don't want to give it to a tenant, they want to give it to an owner. Now, I believe the Batemans, have you been involved in this kind of situation where you had to take temporary? So what they proposed, and seemed to make sense to the Board of Selectmen, since there was a fair amount of money to remediate this, was to agree for just a short period of time to convey title to the Batemans to give them the ability to get this federal funding with an agreement that has been worked out that they're going to convey it right back within 180 days. And there is a date certain that they have to convey it by. Now, it's not going to take 180 days to do this remediation. So it may be a matter of several weeks or a month. Once it's all done and it's inspected, it's going to get conveyed back. So the deal changed just a little bit, and that's the background as to why the Board of Selectmen have to go back to the townspeople and have a special meeting in order to get the authority to do that. So I just wanted to let people know that's the background for why you have these two warrant articles.
You all set? Anything you want to add to that at this point? You all set?
No, I think you did. You did a very good job.
All right, we'll start in the back. And as usual, please state your name.
Tom Levine. Just a couple of issues of clarity, actually. Both articles, can they reflect more specifically rather than surrounding grounds? The lease, as I read it, calls out excluded parcels, but yet the warrants only reflect a vague terminology of surrounding grounds, both Article 2 and 3. And then last, I would just like to address I understand your statement about conveying the title, but even as you say it, and maybe it's me, but it doesn't seem to sit well with me that in order for a group to qualify for funding, they need title. So we're going to temporarily give title. And once they get the funding, they're going to give it back. One, I'd like the language to also reflect an automatic conveyance with a specific date, because frankly, the lease doesn't have a certain date, as you mentioned. It says on or about or approximate when the work is complete. And that's really kind of open-ended, because things come up. So I think it should be automatic on a certain date. And if the environmental work isn't complete, then I think it's the responsibility of the developers to come to you and say, these are the issues, whether they be labor or supply, that were out of our control, and we're going to need to extend beyond the automatically certain need. But last, the point being, I just feel it's deceptive to convey a title to make someone qualify for funds, and after they get them, they get the title back. I'm not sure how many other arenas that would actually apply in, because it seems that you're either playing the rules, which again I understand, or it could be interpreted that it's intentionally to deceive those that administer the grants, because that is their rule, you have to own it. So if you say, well, you're gonna own it for 10 days so you can get your money. But most importantly, the language in the warrants, I hope it will reflect what's excluded, as the lease does, what's included, more so than just surrounding grounds, because that's 10.2 acres, that whole area. I understand the lease calls out the police station as excluded. I'm also not sure what the development parcel is. Is that something to do with the Bateman project, the adjacent on the exhibit?
The development parcel is the school that they'll be working on.
Well, there's an adjacent development parcel?
No.
Sure.
Well, I think it's in,
It's just a clarification. I don't have my glasses on.
See if you can explain it. What was this question, Keith?
On the map, there was some arrows that were
Thanks.
pointing, and the wording was down in the corner, and the arrows pointed to the development parcel. And it looked a little confusing that it may have included other parcels, which it does not. And then the school premises, which is the piece of the development.
I actually had one clarification that I think I probably should have mentioned, and Tom brought up an excellent point regarding this.
Stand up and talk to the, you
Absolutely,
can face the people.
that's terrific. One point of clarification.
Your name, sir?
My name is Nathan Bateman, excuse me, with Bateman Partners, I apologize for protocol. But to answer Tom's question of why we're going down this route of dealing with a transfer of title for this period of 180 days. And what it really comes through the simple fact of this. The Brownsfield funds have funds for two different types of funding. One is a grant, which is just monies that are given to owners of properties or nonprofits or municipalities to help remediate and clear up environmental issues. The second are funds that are used as a loan for for-profit developers like ourselves. Obviously, grant is money giveaway, which is just free money. A loan is money that has to be paid back. The threshold question to qualify for that, however, is that when that entity, whether it be a nonprofit or a for-profit, takes possession of the property, they have to have a phase one, which is a phase one environmental. Now, unfortunately, when the town of Berwick took ownership from the school district of the school property, a phase one was never completed. So by default, they neither qualified for grant money or loan money, and there's no way that was going to change. So the conveyance was actually recommended to us by Southern Maine Regional Planning. They've done it in other municipalities where the same thing happened, where a municipality took ownership of a property, never took a phase one, so instantaneously were thrown out. So by using this mechanism of conveyance for 180 days, all of a sudden we qualified for not grant money, but loan money for the remediation period. And that was strictly recommended to us by the agency itself of the gain access to these brownfield funds. So that was it in a nutshell. The minimum threshold of holding that is 180 days, and that's why it's exactly that, is 180 days to remediate and then convey back to simply gain access to federal funds to do good works and clean up. The unfortunate thing is if the town would have, in its foresight at the time,